I never thought I'd get into this kind of relationship with my brother's girlfriend, but somehow it happened. Her kisses woke up my desires one by one. It all started with a phone call, not a dramatic one, not even particularly long, just her name glowing on my screen a few minutes past midnight. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. "Ava," I whispered, careful not to wake my brother across the hall. Her voice came through soft, lazy, and almost amused. "Hey, Lila. You're still awake?" "Barely," I said, pulling the blanket higher. "Why are you calling me this late?" There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. "I couldn't sleep. Thought I'd bother you instead." That was Ava, bold in the most casual ways. She never seemed to think twice before doing something that made everyone else pause. She'd been dating my brother, Ethan, for almost 6 months now, and somehow she had become part of the house. Her perfume lingering on the couch, her laughter echoing down the hall. At first, I didn't know what to think of her. She was older, 21, confident, sharp-tongued, and beautiful in that way that made people stare a little too long. She dressed like she knew exactly what she was worth, yet spoke like she didn't care if anyone noticed. But the more I saw her, the more I realized she noticed everything, especially me. "I'm surprised you answered," she teased, her voice drifting through the darkness. "I thought good girls like you sleep early." "I don't sleep early," I murmured, trying to sound unaffected. So you're a night owl." I like that, it was harmless. Probably, but something about the way she said it, slow, drawn out, made me feel like she wasn't just talking about sleep. We talked about nothing for a while, music, her college, a movie she couldn't finish because Ethan fell asleep halfway through. I laughed more than I expected to. It was strange, having her attention like that, with no one else around. Usually when she was here, she belonged to my brother, her hand in his, her head on his shoulder. But tonight, it was just her voice and me, and a quiet that felt heavier than usual. When we hung up, it was nearly 1 a.m. I lay there for a long time staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why I couldn't stop smiling. The next morning, Ava showed up like nothing had happened. She was in one of those cropped white shirts that made her tan skin stand out, her hair tied up carelessly. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said when she saw me in the kitchen. "You're here early," I mumbled, hiding behind my coffee mug. She shrugged. "Ethan asked me to come by." I brought croissants. When she smiled, it was the same one she'd used over the phone, soft but knowing. I felt something stir in my chest, something I didn't want to name. While she and Ethan talked in the living room, I pretended to read on the counter. But my eyes kept finding her. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she laughed and rested her hand on my brother's arm. I didn't like that. Or maybe I liked it too much. Later, when Ethan left for a quick errand, Ava stayed behind. She leaned against the kitchen counter beside me. "You're quiet today," she said. "I'm always quiet," I replied. "No, you're not. Not when you're comfortable." She was too close now. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and warm. My pulse picked up, and I hated that she probably noticed. "I didn't keep you up too late last night, did I?" she asked lightly. "You did," I admitted before I could stop myself. Her lips curved. "Good. You should talk to me more often. You're more fun than your brother sometimes." I laughed, unsure how to respond. Ava looked pleased, almost like she enjoyed seeing me flustered. Then Ethan came back, and just like that, her focus shifted. But every so often, I caught her glancing at me, that same faint smirk returning for a second before vanishing. That night, I told myself it wouldn't happen again, that she'd called me once because she was bored, not because she meant anything by it, but at exactly midnight, my phone buzzed again. Ava calling. My heart jumped before I could even think. "Why are you calling me again?" I whispered when I answered, half annoyed, half expecting it. "Because you picked up," she said simply. There was music playing faintly in the background, some slow melody. Her voice was softer this time, almost sleepy. "I can't sleep unless I talk to someone who listens," she said. "And you actually listen, Lila. You have Ethan for that," I said, but it came out smaller than I meant. "He doesn't get it." "You do something about that." Sentence sank deep. I didn't know what she meant, but I wanted to. We talked again, about small, stupid things, but I couldn't stop noticing the pauses, the little silences that stretched long enough for me to hear her breathing. Once she whispered, "Do you ever feel like someone sees too much of you?" "Yes," I said before I thought. "Good," she murmured. "Then maybe you'll understand me." The line went quiet for a few seconds after that. I didn't know what to say. The air felt heavier again, like it had that first night. Finally, I asked, "Ava," she hummed in response. "What are we doing?" She laughed softly, but it wasn't mocking. It was gentle, like she knew I was serious. "Nothing bad," she said, "Ochai. Just talking." But she said it too quietly to believe. Before hanging up, her voice dropped lower. "Don't tell Ethan I called again, okay?" Then the call ended, leaving me staring at my reflection in the dark screen, my face flushed, my heart racing, my thoughts a tangled mess. I told myself I wouldn't answer next time. I told myself it was harmless. But when her name appeared again the next night, glowing faintly in the dark, I didn't even hesitate. Ava had a way of filling the house with her presence. Even when she wasn't speaking, it felt like everything shifted slightly around her, like the air itself bent toward her. Every visit left a trace. Her perfume in the hallway, her laughter in the kitchen, her mug half finished on the counter. My brother Ethan was always happy when she was around, and I told myself I should be too. But lately I caught myself waiting for her visits more than he did. That morning she came earlier than usual, wearing a pale blue blouse and that same careless bun that somehow made her look effortlessly perfect. I was sitting at the table scrolling through my phone when she leaned on the counter and said with a teasing grin, "You look tired, Leela." "Maybe because someone kept me up last night," I said, keeping my eyes on the screen. "Oh, who would do that?" she asked, pretending to sound innocent. I looked up at her. "You." She smiled, slow and knowing. "Then maybe you should learn to say no." I wanted to tell her I couldn't, that there was something about her voice that made no feel impossible, but Ethan walked in just then, breaking the tension. They greeted each other with a kiss on the cheek, and I looked away too quickly. I didn't like the strange twist in my chest that came every time I saw them together. It was easier not to think about it. After breakfast, Ethan left to pick up some things from the hardware store, and Ava decided to stay behind. "I'll keep Lila company," she said casually, and Ethan smiled, completely unaware of how that sentence made my heart skip. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt too loud. "You don't talk much, do you?" Ava asked, settling on the couch beside me. "I talk when I have something to say," I replied, flipping through a magazine I wasn't reading. "You talked plenty on the phone," she said softly, leaning closer. "You have a nice voice, you know." Her shoulder brushed mine. It wasn't much, just a small touch, but it sent a quiet rush of warmth through me. I tried to shift away subtly, pretending to reach for something on the coffee table, but she noticed and smiled like she could read my mind. "Relax, I'm not going to bite," she murmured. She stayed for hours that day. We watched a movie while waiting for Ethan. Though neither of us paid much attention, I felt her eyes on me every now and then, and when she laughed at something on screen, her hand brushed my knee as if by accident. My breath caught. She didn't move it right away. Then Ethan's car pulled into the driveway, and she stood abruptly, straightening her shirt as if nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't focus on anything. The scenes from the day played on repeat in my mind. The way she looked at me, the way she touched me without reason. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. But when the clock struck midnight, and my phone buzzed again, I already knew who it was. "You're awake," she said when I answered, her voice low like a secret. "Apparently," I whispered. "You're making a habit out of this. I told you, I like talking to you." "You should be talking to my brother," I said, though my tone lacked conviction. "He's asleep," she replied. "You're not." There was a soft rustle on her end of the line, the sound of sheets, maybe. I pressed my phone tighter to my ear, imagining her lying there in the dark. "You're quiet again," she said, almost teasing. "I just don't know what you want from me," I admitted. "Maybe I just want someone who listens." "You keep saying that," I whispered, "but it feels like you want more." She laughed under her breath, the kind of laugh that wasn't really laughter at all. "You always say exactly what you're thinking, don't you?" "Not always," I said. "Well, that's good," she murmured. "Some things are better left unsaid." I didn't know what to do with the silence that followed. I could hear her breathing faintly through the line, steady and close. It felt like she was in the room with me, like she was watching me even though she wasn't there. The next day she visited again. She stood behind me while I made tea, her hand brushing mine when I reached for the sugar. It could have been accidental, but her fingers lingered a second too long. When I looked at her, she just smiled. "You're jumpy," she said softly. "Maybe it's because you keep sneaking up on me. Or maybe," she whispered, "you like when I do." I froze. She said it so lightly that I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Ethan walked in a minute later, and she greeted him with that same bright warmth she always had. No one else would have noticed anything strange, but I did. I always did. That evening, I replayed her words in my mind, trying to make sense of them. Maybe she was teasing. Maybe I was overthinking. But when my phone buzzed again at midnight and her name lit up my screen, all my carefully built logic dissolved. Couldn't sleep again? I asked. Maybe I didn't want to, she said. You make the nights more interesting. I didn't know whether to laugh or hang up, so I did neither. I just listened as she talked about small, meaningless things, her voice soft enough to blur the edges of my thoughts. At some point, I realized I was smiling. When we finally said goodnight, I stared at my phone for a long time, my pulse unsteady. I had no idea what was happening between us, only that I couldn't stop waiting for her next call, and even then, with my phone still glowing in the dark, I never imagined this was only the beginning of something I wouldn't know how to end. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, those brown eyes that lingered too long, the way her voice trembled before she said goodnight. The house had been silent after she went upstairs, but my head wasn't. Every word, every look we shared replayed on a loop, like my mind was taunting me with what I couldn't have. By morning, the sunlight had no warmth. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold long ago, staring at the staircase. She hadn't come down yet. A part of me was relieved. The other part, it was shameful. Wanted to see her, just to feel that pulse of something forbidden. Again. When she finally did appear, she was wearing one of my shirts. It hung loose on her, barely brushing her thighs, the sleeves rolled up like she didn't care how wrong it looked. Her hair was messy, eyes still sleepy, and for a split second I forgot to breathe. Morning, she said softly, rubbing her eyes. Her voice was rough from sleep, innocent and dangerous all at once. I swallowed hard. Morning, you should have woken me up if you were hungry. She smiled faintly, moving to the counter to grab a glass. You looked tired last night. I didn't want to bother you. Then, after a pause, she added, You worry too much. I almost laughed. Someone has to. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick, heavy. She sat across from me, pouring herself orange juice, her bare leg brushing against my knee under the table. Whether it was accidental or not, I couldn't tell. But I didn't move. Neither did she. Her eyes flicked up. You didn't sleep, did you? I shook my head. Couldn't. Because of me? She asked it so quietly, like she already knew the answer. I looked away. You shouldn't ask things you already know. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. I just wanted to hear you say it. Her tone, it wasn't teasing this time. It was soft, almost pleading. Something inside me twisted. I wanted to reach across that small wooden table and trace the corner of her lips the way I'd imagined too many times. But that line, that invisible, impossible line, it was still there between us. Instead, I stood up and walked to the sink. You should get ready. I'll drive you to class. She sighed but nodded, slipping off the chair. As she passed behind me, I felt the faintest brush of her fingers against my back. It was nothing. It was everything. By the time I turned, she was gone upstairs again. Later that day, when I picked her up from campus, the air between us had shifted. She slid into the passenger seat, eyes on me. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windshield, painting her face in gold. She looked like something I shouldn't even be allowed to look at. Thanks for the ride, she murmured. You didn't have to. I wanted to, I said before I could stop myself. The drive home was quiet, except for the hum of the road. At a red light, she reached for the stereo, changing the song. A slow one filled the car. Her favorite, I remembered. She sang under her breath, barely audible. And when the light turned green, I didn't move right away. I just watched her. Her hand rested on the console, inches from mine. So close, I could feel her warmth. Without thinking, I let my pinky brush hers. A spark. She didn't pull away this time. In fact, she turned her hand slightly, letting her fingertips graze my skin in a silent, wordless answer. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. When we finally reached home, she stayed in the car even after I'd turned off the engine. Her eyes were on the dashboard, lips parted like she was about to say something. Then she looked at me, slowly, directly. I keep trying not to think about it. She whispered, but every time I'm near you, it's all I can do. I exhaled, my voice low. You shouldn't. I know. Her gaze flickered to my mouth. But I can't help it. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air was trembling, holding its breath. Then she opened the door and stepped out, leaving the scent of her perfume and 1,000 unsaid things behind, but, at that time, I didn't know there was much yet to come. The house was wrapped in silence, the kind that only existed past midnight. The clock in the living room ticked so quietly it sounded like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. My brother had left for his night shift hours ago. I was sprawled on the couch with a blanket around me, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my mind was anywhere but calm. I knew she'd come. She always did, sometimes with an excuse, sometimes with none. And tonight, I could almost feel her arrival before I even heard the soft knock. When I opened the door, she stood there, framed by the pale porch light, wearing one of his oversized hoodies and no makeup. Her hair was slightly messy, eyes glassy with something I couldn't name. "Hey," she whispered, her voice carrying that same low, guilty tone I'd come to recognize. "Couldn't sleep again?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. She shook her head. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. The air between us was different tonight. Too still. Too expectant. She walked past me, her shoulder brushing mine lightly, and that tiny contact felt louder than the ticking clock. She curled up on the couch, pulling her knees to her chest, the blanket slipping from my hands as I stood there watching her. "You're always up this late," she said softly, looking over her shoulder at me. "So are you," I replied, moving to sit beside her. For a while, neither of us spoke. The TV light flickered across her face, soft gold and blue shadows that made her look unreal, like something half-dreamed. I could feel her gaze shifting toward me again and again. When our eyes finally met, I didn't look away this time. She smiled faintly. "You know," she murmured, "he never listens the way you do." I swallowed. "Maybe you just never tell him what you tell me." Her expression softened into something fragile, something that scared me because of how much I wanted to protect it. She leaned back, stretching out, the hem of her hoodie riding up a little. My heartbeat picked up, painfully aware of the closeness. "I shouldn't be here," she said after a long moment. "Then why are you?" I asked. Her answer came in silence first, then barely above a whisper. "Because when I feel something real." I don't know what came over me then. Maybe it was the way her eyes searched mine like she was asking for permission without words. Maybe it was the months of unspoken tension unraveling all at once. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned closer, her breath warm against my wrist. "Don't," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "Don't make me forget who I'm supposed to be with." But I could hear it in her tone. She was already forgetting. She shifted closer, close enough that our knees touched. My whole body felt like it was holding its breath. Her fingers grazed mine. It was the smallest touch, but it burned. I could smell her perfume, faint and familiar, mixed with the scent of laundry detergent and rain from outside. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, like the world itself had shrunk down to the few inches between us. Her hand moved first. It rested against mine, uncertain, trembling. I didn't move, didn't speak, afraid that any sound would break the spell. When she finally looked up, there was something pleading in her eyes, something that felt like surrender. "You'll hate me for this," she said softly. "I won't," I answered, before I could stop myself. She searched my face one last time, then leaned in. The space between our breaths disappeared. Everything went quiet except for the sound of the rain starting outside, faint and rhythmic, like it was covering for us. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was something deeper. The moment just before it, the ache, the pulse, the mutual knowing. My hands trembled as I cupped her face and her eyes fluttered shut, her breath quickening. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the hesitation melting into need. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, soft and slow, like a warning neither of us wanted to hear. She pressed her forehead against mine, our noses brushing, both of us frozen in that unbearable in-between. "If we do this," she breathed, "we can't take it back." "I know," I whispered, "but maybe I don't want to." The thunder rolled again, closer this time. And then, without another word, the last of the distance disappeared. The blanket slipped to the floor. The couch creaked softly as the night folded around us, sealing what we'd both been fighting for far too long. Everything that followed was a blur of warmth, heartbeat, and the kind of silence that only comes when there's no going back. And when the storm finally eased, The room still felt charged, alive. She rested against me, eyes half closed, a small broken smile playing on her lips. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered, but I could hear what she didn't say. She would come again. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain. I knew then, no matter how wrong this was, that midnight would never be quiet again. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it brought no warmth. Ethan was making breakfast with Ava by his side, laughing like nothing had changed. I sat at the counter, stirring my cereal, pretending not to notice the way her hand brushed against his arm, the casual closeness that had always been theirs. Yet my stomach twisted with every smile she gave him, every soft laugh that didn't reach me. I hated myself for it. I hated the way my chest ached watching them together, yet I couldn't look away. Ava caught my eyes once fleetingly when I reached for the sugar. That glance made my heartbeat stutter, and I forced myself to look down at my bowl. She smiled faintly, almost secretively, like she knew exactly what she was doing to me. I wanted to run away from that feeling, but it pulled me in instead. I knew she felt it too, the tension we'd crossed hours before. The line between us was gone, yet no one else would ever see it. Throughout the day, her texts came in short, deliberate bursts, little reminders that she still existed in the private space between us. "Did you get home safely? I keep thinking about last night. Don't let him notice I called." Each message was a spark, igniting the ache I could never name aloud. I scolded myself for responding, for smiling at her words, for waiting until she typed again. But I did. Every single time. Evenings were the hardest. Seeing them sit side by side on the couch, holding hands as Ethan rested his head against her shoulder, made my chest feel too full. I wanted to tell him, to tell myself, to stop this before it went too far. But when Ava leaned toward me under the pretense of handing me a blanket, her lips brushing my cheek, I froze. The thrill and fear collided in my body, my mind screaming one thing while my heart answered another. It wasn't safe. It wasn't right. Yet every touch, every stolen glance, every whispered word between us was addictive. I tried to reason with myself. This had to end. But the moment she whispered my name under the noise of the kitchen, soft and low, the thought of ending it vanished. I was too deep. I was too tangled in the warmth and attention she gave me, and I could no longer imagine letting it go. One evening, as Ethan was distracted by his phone in the living room, Ava pulled me into the corner by the stairs. It was a quick secret kiss, soft, urgent, and electric. My heart raced, and my chest ached all at once. The risk of being caught made the moment burn brighter, sharper. I felt her hand linger on mine, our fingers entwined almost instinctively. In that instant, all the guilt, desire, and fear converged into a single, unbearable truth. We were no longer just the people everyone else saw. We were something private, something forbidden, and neither of us wanted to stop. I tried to sleep that night, but my mind was full of her. Her smile, her voice, the way her hand felt in mine. Every touch, every glance, replayed endlessly. I thought about ending it again, promising myself I would, but when my phone buzzed at midnight, I didn't hesitate. Her name flashed on the screen. I picked it up with a soft smile, my heart skipping as I read her simple message. "Can you come to the couch? I'm waiting." My fingers shook slightly as I typed back, "I'm coming." The couch had become our world, the place where the rules faded, where the outside didn't exist. She was there, just as I imagined, wrapped in one of my brother's hoodies, eyes warm and inviting. When I sat beside her, our hands found each other naturally, and the tension of everything we weren't supposed to do, everything we were, settled around us like a blanket. I leaned against her shoulder, letting the warmth seep into me, and for the first time in days I allowed myself to breathe fully. My mind raced with guilt, with love, with fear, with desire, tangled threads that I couldn't unravel. I knew the risks, knew how wrong it was, but the pull between us was too strong to resist. And as the clock struck 1, I realized this would continue. Midnight would always belong to her and me, no matter who else was in the house. No matter the lines we had crossed, I knew I should have said no, but I didn't want to. I've crossed the line I never should have, and yet every stolen touch, every secret smile pulls me further in. I can't pretend it isn't wrong, or that it doesn't feel right. What are we now, really? Lovers in the shadows, or just two people tangled in something neither of us can name? I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to stop. Tell me, what would you do if desire and guilt were impossible to separate? Leave a comment and share your thoughts.